Episode 4. The Dream Needs a Backup Plan. I had a TV option with Fox. I believed LA was the next step, and I needed money to make the move. So I turned to the one pool of money that I had, my 401k. I thought I was using my 401k to chase my dream. What I didn't understand was that I was also cashing out part of my future. This podcast is about reinvention, but reinvention often starts with a painful question. What did I not understand before the collapse? Growing up, I had a lot of family members always willing to pour advice into me. My grandmother, my maternal grandmother, and my father often stressed the importance of saving early. And I listened enough to start. But truthfully, I didn't understand all the details of the 401k account. Um, I didn't really do a whole lot of reading research on it. I didn't understand rollover options. I didn't understand the taxes and penalties that could happen if you take money, if you try to access money before the legal retirement age. I didn't understand market risk, how your money can go up and down in those accounts. Only thing I knew was that the money came out. It just came out automatically and you didn't have to think about it. So I liked that part. So I listened just enough to start saving, but not enough to understand what I was doing. So my 401k was growing for 2, 3 years when suddenly this opportunity to go to LA presented itself. I felt all this momentum with the writing, the readings, the Fox option. And I really believed and really desired to go to LA. I was tired of East Coast winters and, just ready to trade the skyscrapers for palm trees. So I wasn't trying to be irresponsible. I was just trying to believe in my future. I really believed in what I was doing and the move I was making. But that belief in itself is not enough. When I cashed out my 401k, after a couple years, I had like, I don't know, 7,000 roughly in the account. But what happens is, you end up getting taxed. You end up paying income taxes. Okay, so I was paying income taxes, and I was probably in about 25% tax bracket at that time, on the federal level, and then another, New York state taxes, where I was probably paying another 5 to 6% there. So you look at that, that's about 30%. And then if you access money from the 401k early before retirement, then you're looking at a 10% penalty. So now you're talking 31 plus another 10% in penalties. So I lost 40% by cashing out my 401k. But I didn't feel like I had a choice. That was really the only way I could finance the move so quickly. So I ponied up and I made the move. I made the move because, it was clear to me that, yes, Fox was guaranteeing to produce the winning teleplay script, but they had all these other options on the semifinalists, and it didn't mean that they couldn't produce any of those. So, it was like maybe, maybe not. A good idea is a good idea, right? So there was still a possibility without winning the competition. And I just believe based on my communication with the VP executive at Fox that like something was going to come to fruition, if not on this project, on something else. This guy was in a position of great power at the network, and he was not like I expected. I expected to meet someone that he was just much more down to earth, much more approachable, and he was really a breath of fresh air, um, from what I knew, and from executives that I had known and the little experience that I had had up to this point. I'm basically about 26 years old at this moment. But after I made the move to LA and we ended up linking up and going out for an evening, and he told me that, they weren't going to end up producing our project. Obviously, it was like I was on a huge high, and all of a sudden I was at low of lows. But you know what? Like, even though I was learning that they weren't going to produce the project, as low as, as much as that hurt, because, I was on this high, it was the highest of heights for me emotionally in terms of what was going on, to then come out here and just all of that just being devastated. The thing I was happy about was that I was going for it, right? I mean, there was things in my life that I had before then, like basketball. I just kind of jumped ship on that. I didn't see that through like I should have. And one of the things that has affected me is I would rather try and fail than not even not even try. The regret and the sting from that I had already learned at the young age of 26. So I was, balls to the wall. It was like I went for it. It's like this is plan A, and plan B is C plan A, right? So that's just kind of how my mentality was. Um, and I don't, it's nothing wrong with that. The dream did not fail because I lacked passion. The dream failed because the outcome wasn't in my control. I controlled the sacrifice. I didn't control the result. That was never in my control. So I did everything that I could do to win. And through all the ups and downs, the roller coaster, emotional roller coaster that I've lived and been on, I can't feel bad about that. I'm not I can't feel sorry for myself about that. I have peace knowing that I went for it. Nonetheless, LA it was challenging trying to figure out, okay, how do I pick up the pieces now? I don't want to just go like get locked into some, I don't know, I don't know what you call it, just a job to just pay bills. I didn't want to go like, just go fry chicken wings all day or something like that. Nothing wrong with good, honest work. Don't get me wrong. But that's not what I wanted to do. It's like, man, I made a lot of sacrifice to get here, to go for it, and I don't want to get trapped into some situation where I've got to perform for some business owner. Like, I just didn't. But everybody, you have to do what you have to do at certain points. You can't, maybe that was narrow thinking on my part. Um, but however, my great uncle's friend, he bailed me out because he had clients. He had like a club that he would go, and he was like the bathroom attendant, and he had all these colognes. He'd give out the cologne, and he would, hand them paper towel and, I don't know, sell cigarettes or We'd have bottles of aspirin in case someone got a headache, so when you would go in there, he was this bathroom attendant. And he asked me, he said, did I feel like I could do that? I think I one a couple nights a week. And man, I tell you, the idea of it was like, this is not what I came to LA for, to be a bathroom attendant. But I I guess it's humility. I shouldn't look at it. I shouldn't look at it as really humbling myself, I don't think, because at the same time, that's still good, honest work, right? So I took him up on that, and it was tips only. We only survived on tips. The venue didn't pay us anything. They just liked our presence there because it made the venue, it uplifted the whole, it uplifted the venue because we had like 30, 40 bottles of cologne in the bathroom. I mean, it just made it feel more upscale for the men that came through. We had mints, we had candies, all that kind of stuff. I mean, I've seen a lot of bathroom attendants at various places I've been to, but I will say we had the setup of setups. So and I learned a lot about colognes. Issey Miyake was one of my favorite. Uh, I'm not even Sean. What was it? Jean Paul Gaultier. Man, there was some. Paris Hilton surprisingly had a very good cologne, men's cologne that probably to this day is actually one of my favorites. But in any case, it wasn't quite a job. It was entrepreneurship. It was self-employment, and it was, again, hustling because I would go into this place at, like, 7 p.m., and, um, I would leave, I don't know, by the time I had everything all packed up, sometimes it could be 3 or 4 in the morning from this place, when I was leaving, and I would do this, like, a couple nights a week. Sometimes if he was sick, I'd take his shift, um and we had, I think I had a couple different venues that I would do this for. So I was doing that while I was also like getting a night or two. I would get like 4 to 6 nights a month recording the comics at Hollywood Improv. So I wasn't rich by any means, but you know, I was pulling in enough to sustain myself and keep my hustle going. Um, so eventually, though, I I s you know, it was tough looking in the mirror at the club, and I would see this guy that's 26, 27, 28. I was, like, in my mid to late 20s with a college degree and, like, all this other type of experience in New York, and here I am in the bathroom as a bathroom attendant. I did have problem reconciling that, it was like it was on good honest money, and it was better money than I expected, because sometimes, particularly in LA, celebrities would come in, shoot, who I remember, basketball player Lamar Odom, if he came in to the place, he'd give you $100, so there would be nights like that where we come home pretty well, just depending on what clientele came through. Um, but then there was nights where it wasn't great. It was kind of like, man, I wish I just gone home, gone to sleep. But so I wanted something that I perceived more stable, more professional. Um, Not that that wasn't professional. I just wanted something that I felt I could build off of more. So that's why I started looking in the LA Times for another job opportunity. And that's when I saw this ad that said, "Do you want to learn about money?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I want to learn about money," And so it was a job that it was a job becoming a mortgage banker in Beverly Hills, 90210. And I went in and interviewed, got the job, and I added that was like my day job from 9 to 5. And for a while, I kept going to the bathroom job as well, but it was very hard because I'd be there. I'd have to get there. Like I'd have a couple hours to get there after I leave the bank, and then I'd be working till this is like at least 2 in the morning, and then get home at like 3:30 at night, and then I'd have to get up the next morning to go to the bank, be there by 9. It was exhausting. So I eventually cut the cut out the bathroom attendant unless it was like like somebody was sick or something. I might go fill in periodically, but I did that for a couple years. So anyway, getting back to the banking job, it was an opportunity to. I did learn about money. I learned about credit reports, like TransUnion, Equifax, Experian, um, how people's credit affects their ability to get loans, how people's credit affects their ability to get jobs. I had no idea that, like, you know, employers were looking at your credit, deciding, and that was weighing in on whether or not they'd give you a job if you had bad credit. Well, and to me, that's like the stupidest thing because you need money to, you need a job to pay your bills so that you can maintain your good credit. So, like, I just felt like there's some stuff in the system that's unfair, but I'm digressing right now. Let me get back on track here. I learned a lot about refinancing. Um, and home purchasing. It's usually one of the biggest, if not the biggest, financial decision in a person's life. So there was a lot of aspects to that, and I, I, I don't know. I guess at the time I thought I was just answering a job ad, but looking back on it, I was really answering a calling. Now, the lesson I learned in all this is that, you know, dreams need protection. Ambition needs education. Passion needs a plan. Now, let me be clear about this. I'm not telling anybody to avoid risk. Risk is inherent. Almost anything worth doing is going to involve some risk. I'm just telling people not to take risks blindly. Okay. And I'm not telling you, this is really entrepreneurs and creatives, young people, freelancers, anyone chasing a calling of some sort or another. Understand that risk is inherent in what you're doing. I know that firsthand. Okay. And I'm not telling you don't dream big. Dream big by all means. Yes, dream big. But I'm just saying I want you to be better prepared than I was. That's the reason why I'm doing this. That's the reason why I'm talking about this. That's the whole reason why I am a financial literacy advocate. Is I want people to dream. I want people to go after their dreams. I just want you to be better prepared than I was. Don't stop dreaming. Just stop making financial decisions you don't understand because the dream told you everything would work out. That was like my kryptonite. My dream just inherently to dream about this. I had a hope, a dream, a strong belief, conviction that everything would work out. And that's not necessarily so. Everything isn't always going to work out. Things are going to fall off. Things are going to fall off all the time, right and left. Everything's not always going to work out. Everything's not, it's just not always going to work out. In fact, more things are going to go wrong and fail than things that are probably going to go right. But the good thing is you only got to be right once. You only have to get things right one time. And often that, that whatever that is can propel you to new heights. And it might work in some weird ways. I remember in New York at the casting studio. Uh, geez, this is really kind of backwards, but it's relevant, and I'm just gonna wing it and say this. There was a big director named Bob Giraldi, and he was, he had a lot of work. I think he was teaching classes at NYU, but between that, he was directing a lot of commercials. And my understanding of it was, he he directed the commercial where the Pepsi commercial where Michael Jackson's hair caught on fire. Um, and, and in a weird way, I mean, that's what he was. Well, that's what I knew. That's how I knew him. That's how I knew of who he was. It was like his fame became even more famous from that. You know, um, Even though I'm sure the guy's really, 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 he's obviously clearly if a company like Pepsi would hire him and have him work with Michael Jackson, Bob Giraldi knows his stuff. Wasn't particularly nice to me. Wasn't particularly. I didn't get to see the human side of him like that. He was a busy guy. But I just bring him up because I feel like that's an example of how you never know where your blessings are going to come from. And somehow that scenario, w- you know, uh, you turn lemon into lemonade. So now I've got a couple questions I could ask here. Maybe you can answer one, if not both of these questions for yourself. What financial decision are you making right now that you don't fully understand? Or are you protecting your dream, or are you borrowing from your future to chase it? Let me say that again. Are you protecting your dream, or are you borrowing from your future to chase it? All right. Next episode, I'll talk about what happened when the foundation finally cracked and what it really felt like to be homeless in Hollywood. The main message, the main message from this episode is I didn't need less ambition. I needed more preparation because the dream got me to Los Angeles. Growing up, I was in fifth grade when we moved to this house with 8.5 acres. Over that amount of time in that house, we had dogs, sheep, pigeons, racing pigeons, um, horses. Man, I know I'm leaving still. Ducks, rabbits. Um, we had we had a little mini petting farm. You know, um, and it was a lot to maintain and a lot of responsibility. I was the oldest son, and I did a lot of lawn mowing. 3 days a week, 4 days a week, I'd be out mowing grass during that season. And so I had a lot of time to reflect on what I wanted to do with my future. Riding around on that mower, I had a lot of time to think about it. And again, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, but I knew I always wanted to go to Los Angeles. As far as I was concerned, I'd be a basketball player, but in the off season, if I didn't play for the Lakers because I wanted to play for the Pistons, if I didn't play for the Lakers, I'd have a home in LA, right? And the dream manifested. From me cutting grass, the dream manifested itself on some level because the dream got me to LA. But the lack of financial preparation made sure I arrived exposed from the very outset. I was exposed. And I fought against it. I fought against it. I fought. 20 years I fought. But I could never get over that hump of financial insecurity at that time. Thank you so much.